Williams.
And I'm Billy Thomas.
And welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. You know, in December, I have way too many Christmas editions. So I can't really say this is our Christmas edition, but it's many Christmas editions for the show.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you all for being with us. We've got a whole series of great guests, including a new one or so. I'm really excited.
Two new. Yeah.
I always love our first time guests.
I know. I said Billy's going to be so excited.
I know. We get to kind of expand our community, right? You know, because we're all here together because we care about our forests and wildlife and our natural resources, and we all want to be good stewards, and we want to help others learn. So, yeah, it's really great to have those on there. So we're going to have Hannah Blevins talking about bed bugs. That's not a very good subject, but it's a really important one to learn a lot about, right?
Well, especially right now. I mean, you're visiting, you're going to hotels, you know. Yep. Let's make sure they don't hitch a ride home with you.
Yeah, so looking forward to that. We're also going to be talking about mistletoe. We got Hansborough and Dr. Ellen Crocker with us. Looking forward to hearing about that. That'll be interesting. And then we have our very own Matt Springer is going to be talking about recycling your Christmas tree. So it's going to be a great show. If you have any questions for any of our presenters throughout the day, please use the chat function. If you're on YouTube or you're a podcast listener, thank you very much. But you can hit us up via email at forestry.extension@uky.edu, and we can respond that way. But Renee, delighted to be with you today on this nice day in December.
Yeah, a little chilly, but that's okay. I had some snow this morning. I got out, the car was covered. I was like, wow, okay. I wasn't expecting that. But let's go ahead and get started. So Hannah, if you'd like to turn your camera on. Welcome to the show, first timer.
Hello.
So glad to have you, Hannah.
Thank you all for inviting me.
Yeah, she was talking to me a little bit about, you know, ticks and, you know, bed bugs. And I was like, do we really need to mess with ticks right now?
Hannah, I just came off of Alpha Gal. So I've been dealing with Alpha Gal for the last 3 years for tick bites. So yes, it's an important topic for a lot of people. And, you know, my doctor was saying that foresters and wildlife biologists were the most prevalent profession to have them, the Alpha Gal. So not good.
Not good. So, Hannah, go ahead and tell us how to not have to deal with it.
Yes. Yes. Come save the day, Hannah.
Exactly.
I'll try my best. Let me share my slides.
Awesome.
So again, my name is Hannah Blevins. I'm a second-year master's student at the University of Kentucky in the entomology department. And today I'm going to tell you all a little bit about how we can avoid holiday hitchhikers, specifically ticks and bed bugs. So today I'm going to go into a little bit of the introduction into these two pests and the biology that makes them really good pests. I'll also be talking about where you might run into them this holiday season and how we can avoid them and their impacts. So before I get into it, I did want to define a couple of terms real quick. So what's an insect? What's an arthropod? What's a bug? And so if we look at the taxonomic rank here at the bottom, this is just how we clump things together as scientists. If we start with the biggest, broadest category of kingdom, this is the kingdom Animalia. So both ticks and bed bugs are animals. Insects and arthropods are animals. If we go down to the next category of phylum, both ticks and bed bugs again are in the phylum Arthropoda. So I have a picture here of a couple of arthropods you may have heard of. So insects, spiders, crustaceans, millipedes, centipedes, all of these are arthropods. However, when we go into the class category, this is when we start to split apart. So ticks are in the class Arachnida. So they're alongside of spiders and mites and scorpions. And since all insects are in a different class, Insecta, ticks are not insects. They are arthropods, but not insects. Bed bugs specifically are in the class Insecta, meaning they are insects, but they're also in the order, the next level down, of Hemiptera. So these are true bugs. So if we look at this in a different way, we have our questions here of arthropods. Both ticks and bed bugs are arthropods, but this is where the differences end. So ticks are not insects, they are not bugs, but bed bugs are both. And one of the ways that we can really tell the difference between insects and not insects is the number of legs. And so if we look at our black-legged tick here on the left, they have 8 legs, so 4 pairs. And all arachnids will have 8 legs, while all insects, like the bed bug here, only have 6 legs. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's go into some different tick species that you'll be most familiar with and you might run into in Kentucky for human health concerns. So our first tick here is the black-legged tick, Ixodes scapularis. Some of its nicknames are the deer tick or the bear tick. And some things that it likes are drinking blood. All tick species of all life forms do need a blood meal for their growth, survival, and females and males for their reproductive strategies. Especially deer ticks like drinking blood from white-tailed deer, as their name suggests. Ticks also enjoy being active outside anytime that the weather is above freezing. So it is winter now, it's cold. Right now I can see out my window, there's snow on the ground. And so ticks are not likely to be active right now. However, they don't enter an actual hibernation. So if the weather ever gets above freezing, their dormancy period may end. And so even in the winter, if the weather gets a little warmer on a couple of days, we could have tick activity. So it's not so fun fact is that black-legged ticks are able to transmit at least 7 different pathogens to humans, and these pathogens cause diseases such as babesiosis and ehrlichiosis. If we look here at this family photo, this is a look at the different life stages of black-legged ticks. You can see that the male here is a darker brown all the way down to the bottom of its body, while the female only has that dark brown at the top. This is actually a hard plate called the scutum. And you can see it's not all the way down on females because they need that body size to expand. That lighter brown is more flexible. And so when they take a blood meal, they can expand a lot bigger than males are able to. And I will note here that while all ticks have 8 legs, you can see that larva, that smallest baby form of a tick, actually only has 6 legs. And so this can make ID a little confusing as people may mistake a tick larva for an insect. Since I'm talking about the larval and nymph forms, I wanted to talk a little bit about the different sizes of ticks you may see. So this is a super fun image from the CDC where they say that ticks can be the size of a poppy seed. And so to demonstrate this, they took a poppy seed muffin and they actually placed some of those larval forms of ticks on them, 5 to be exact. So I'll give you a second if you want to try to find those 5 different ticks. Okay, I hope you have them because I'm going to circle them now. Yes, those are actually our tick nymphs. You can see that they do have those little legs that you can just barely see. And so these are really, really small. Some people refer to this stage as seed ticks. And so these are the really small ticks. However, ticks can also get pretty big, especially when they're engorged with blood. You can see here in this image, they're almost as big as a small blueberry or an M&M. And so there's a lot of range in the sizes of ticks you may see. Moving on now to the next species, this is the Lone Star tick, Amblyomma americanum. Some of its nicknames are the northeastern water tick or the turkey tick. Some things that it likes is trying out new spots to eat, and so Lone Star ticks are able to take a blood meal from a wide variety of different hosts, mainly mammals, but also some bird hosts as well. They also enjoy taking charge and getting what they want, and so while most ticks will climb on top of a blade of grass and stick their front legs up, this is a behavior called questing. They're waiting for a host to walk by, brush against them, and then they'll latch on that way. Lone Star ticks will actively pursue their hosts. So they will follow those heat cues or CO2 cues that our bodies are giving off as we're just breathing and moving, and they'll actually follow you along the trail. It's a little creepy. Something that the Lone Star tick dislikes is someone ruining its dinner plans. And hopefully you all will be able by the end of the day with the prevention techniques that I'm talking about, you'll be able to ruin its dinner plan and you will not be its blood meal. It's not so fun fact is along with the diseases that it vectors, such as tularemia and anaplasmosis agents, it's also associated with the mammalian meat allergy caused by the alpha-galactose sugar. And so I'll make a note here that alpha-gal and alpha-gal syndrome, mammalian meat allergy, is not caused by a pathogen. There's not a virus or a bacteria that's associated with it. It's actually, so all mammals have this sugar, this alpha-galactose. So mammals being things like humans, as well as deer, cows, pigs, dogs, cats, all of those are mammals. they have this alpha galactose sugar. And so if you get bitten by a Lone Star tick that also has this sugar, your body could detect that sugar now as a harmful agent and cause an allergic response. So anytime you eat mammal meat now, so a steak or a cheeseburger, anything that's not from poultry or fish, you can break out into an allergic reaction, hives, even some breathing problems. So this can get pretty serious. If we look at the different life stages of the Lone Star tick, you can see the female here has that namesake Lone Star, that one white dot on its back. The male actually doesn't have this. It's a bit more mottled in its color, as well as the nymphs and the larvae. Moving on now to the brown dog tick. This is Rhipicephalus sanguinus. It's also known as the pantropical dog tick or the kennel tick. Something that this tick likes is puppies. So most tick species are only found outdoors. They only thrive and reproduce in outdoor environments. However, the brown dog tick is one of the only tick species that's able to live its full life cycle indoors. So they only need that one type of blood meal. They can only survive on dog blood meal. And so they can live throughout the shelter or the kennel for their entire lifespan. Something that this tick species does not like is when people stay up to date with their dog's tick prevention treatments. And it's not so fun fact is that while it's mainly a menace for canines or dog species, it's also a human vector for Rocky Mountain spotted fever. So you can get a brown dog tick on you, even though they're mainly on dogs or cats. If we look at the different life stages here, these are pretty nondescript. You can see the males and females are pretty similar in their size and shape. They kind of look like a raisin. They're a little smaller, of course, than a raisin. And the nymphs do have that mottled pattern again. Moving on to the last tick in Kentucky that is a human health concern that you may run into. This is the American dog tick, the Dermacentor variabilis. Its nickname is the wood tick, and something that it likes is repetition. And so it can take a blood meal from lots of different host types. So humans, deer, dogs, cats. It can take a blood meal from lots of different kinds of animals, but it prefers the same host throughout its lifespan. So as a nymph, it wants, say, a human blood meal. Then it wants that as a larva all the way up through to an adult. It will only have a taste for human blood, even though it has the possibility to take a different blood meal from a different host. Something that it dislikes is living in heavily forested areas. So you will seldom run into an American dog tick if you're deep into the woods. These are usually found in grassy fields or trails where they can find those blades of grass and they can quest on them. Again, they look for that host seeking behavior. It's not so fun fact is that it can transmit tularemia as well as Rocky Mountain spotted fever to humans. If we look at the different stages for this species, there's actually a lot of variety in how American dog ticks can appear. So you can see the males and the females are kind of a dark color and their standard form. You can see that that scutum, that harder plate on males, again, goes all the way to the bottom of the abdomen, while the females, it's only at the top portion. And you can see it has like a light tan mottled pattern here. But the females, when they take a blood meal, they can look pretty different. So you can see that unfed life form there. You can see that it's that darker brown color. They're pretty flat. But as they take the blood meal and they expand, their color actually starts to change. You can see by day 5, day 7, they start to take on a broadly tan color. But by day 8, if they're getting that full blood meal and they're so engorged, they turn to kind of a gray pallor in color. And they can get pretty big once they're engorged like that. You can see that's way more than 5 times their original body size. So now that you know what you're looking for, where might you run into ticks this holiday season? So ticks are mainly found in tall grasses or around forested areas, but the preference exactly will depend on the tick species. So for example, deer ticks are often found in heavily forested areas where there are deer. So they may be found in the leaf litter, they may be found around the base of trees. However, American dog ticks prefer fields. They prefer those blades of grass so they can quest on them, as you can see the tick doing in this image, waiting for that host to brush up against it when it comes by. However, basically, if you're walking through any natural area in Kentucky that's not completely covered in concrete, no trees, no grass, you could be at risk for tick bites. With a reminder that some ticks can be active anytime that the temp is above freezing, although they will be more active towards this summer as well as early fall. So how do we prevent ticks and tick-borne diseases? So some tick-borne diseases can be easily treated with antibiotics if you go to the doctor. However, some, such as the mammalian meat allergy, there is currently no treatment for. So the best form of prevention is to avoid ticks getting on you and biting you. So in order to prevent ticks getting on you, you can avoid those tall areas of grass or brush where the ticks could be questing, stick to more mowed paths, stick to gravel or beaten down trails. However, I know this isn't always possible. There are times where, especially foresters, you need to go into the thick brush or you need to go through a highly grassy field. And so if you're going into these high risk areas, I do recommend wearing light colored clothing so you can see those dark ticks crawling on you. I also recommend covering as much of your body as you can to give them a little surface area that they can bite you. So long socks, long pants, long sleeves. You should tuck your tall socks into your pants to avoid that gap where the socks may be not meeting the pants. And so you could have your ankle exposed. You want to try to avoid that, especially since a lot of questing ticks are lower on the ground. You can also place a strip of masking tape, sticky side out, make a cuff around the top of your socks, and this will stop any ticks that are questing from the ground up. They will stop before it can reach the rest of your body. I will say that insecticides are one of the best preventative measures that you can use to avoid ticks. Always make sure you follow the label instruction for any insecticide you use. This should always be the case, not only for the efficacy of the product, but also for your own safety. I will recommend if you're going into a high-risk tick area, you should spray your clothes with an insecticide, particularly bug sprays containing at least 20 to 30% DEET. DEET is a known repellent. It's been tested time and time and again, and ticks do not like coming around the smell of DEET. You can also treat your clothing with permethrin, which is a different kind of insecticide, or buy pre-treated permethrin clothing. While permethrin isn't recommended for use directly on the skin, it can be used on the clothing, and this is a repellent as well. Dogs and cats should also be kept up to date with tick treatments, not only for their own safety, as there's a handful of tick-borne diseases that affect our pets, but also because they could be a source of ticks that could come to you next. So you want to keep them up to date with those tick treatments. There are several different kinds available, such as the Seresto collars. There's also sprays and liquids, and your veterinarian will have the best recommendation for you and your pet's needs. If you have been in an area with high tick prevalence, I would suggest checking for ticks as soon as you get home, as well as a couple hours later, just in case you missed any on the first scan of your body. So you should check your full body as everywhere that you can see, but the key areas to check are places where ticks tend to hide. So areas such as your hairline, back behind and inside your ear, the back of the neck, any kind of crevices such as armpits, belly button, behind the knee, and between toes. And especially for those questing ticks, you want to check all around your legs and feet. If you do find a tick on your body through this scan, there are some tips for removing the tick safely. So once you find the tick, make sure you sanitize around the bite area while the tick is still attached, as well as tweezers. Tweezers will be your best tool for removing ticks. So once you sanitize that area, you can use hydrogen peroxide, you can use alcohol solutions. You then want to grab the tick close to its head. This will be kind of difficult if the tick has been on you for a while. They tend to burrow into the skin, but you just want to get as close to the skin as you can and grab the tick with the tweezers, pull up slowly and carefully to remove it. It may be, so ticks actually will cement their mouth parts into your skin when they're taking a blood meal, so it could hurt a little bit when you're pulling it off, but one swift movement should remove the tick pretty easily. After you remove it, I will recommend not immediately squishing it or throwing it away. I would recommend keeping it. You can kill it by putting it in a Ziploc bag and sticking it in the freezer. You can also put it in the Ziploc bag with a cotton round soaked in any kind of alcohol, and this will tend to kill it. But once you remove it, make sure you sanitize that bite area again. And I would recommend anytime you find a tick attached to you, please go to your doctor, go to your local healthcare provider so that they can either start you on a round of antibiotics to make sure that you haven't picked up any pathogens. Especially if you starting to feeling sick after you're taking the antibiotics, this is the good time for you to bring out that tick that you kept. You actually can ID your tick if you contact your local cooperative extension service. And since different ticks carry different pathogens, they'll be able to help you identify and really kind of narrow down what kind of pathogen you may have contracted. I will say, please don't use any methods that you might have heard, such as burning the tick off or smothering it with Vaseline. As I said, the tick does cement its mouth parts into you, so it can't easily just back out of the skin, even if you burn it or if you try to smother it out. They typically are kind of ground into your skin. This can also open a pathway for secondary infection, so I highly recommend not using any of those methods. So if you say, all right, Hannah, sounds good. I'm not worried about ticks anymore. It's also super cold. I'm going to stay inside. Nothing to worry about. Let me introduce now the bed bug. So this is the common bed bug, Cymex lectularis. It's one thing that it likes is showing off its uniqueness. It is the only bed bug species in the US. There are other bed bug species and there are in other places. And we have bat bugs here, which are related species, but Cymex lectularis is our only true bed bug species here in the US. Another thing it likes is keeping to itself. So bed bugs are pretty reclusive. They tend to hide during the day. They also like being around humans. Sometimes you will find bed bugs in places where humans aren't often there, such as in poultry operations. Sometimes we'll have bed bug infestations, but for the most part, they're found around humans and human dwellings, especially near the beds, as their name suggests. They also enjoy feeling grounded, so both bed bugs and ticks do not have wings. They're not able to fly. Something that the bed bug dislikes is the extreme heat or extreme cold. They also don't like certain fungal species, such as Beauveria bassiana. This is actually a novel bed bug treatment. It's not so fun fact is that it actually took a break from the US, the now outlawed pesticide DDT. If you've read Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, you may have heard the harmful impacts that DDT had on our environment. But it was pretty effective in the beginning for eradicating bed bugs. But since it was outlawed and with increased global travel, as well as insecticide resistance development in the bed bug, they are back in the US and they are tougher than ever to control. If we look at the size of bed bugs, many people think that bed bugs are either microscopic or a lot bigger than they actually are. You can see there's different life stages here, and they're all pretty small, around 5 millimeters or less. The eggs are really small and they're white or kind of clear, so it's really hard to see the eggs, especially if you're not sure what you're looking for. However, the bed bugs are visible to the naked eye. They're around the size and shape and color of an apple seed. And so again, they won't have wings. They're pretty flat. They're this dark color. They have a smaller head than their body, which is kind of round and pointed. So these are all key characteristics you can use when you're trying to identify a bed bug. Bed bugs have a variety of negative health impacts on humans, as well as environmental effects and economic impacts. So bed bugs are difficult and costly to control. As I mentioned before, they're back in the US and it is expensive and a lot harder than it used to be to kill bed bugs. They also are associated with a lot of mental health effects, such as shame and paranoia, embarrassment. Some people even report symptoms similar to PTSD. After having a bedbug infestation, they're constantly worried about contracting them again. There's also the risk for secondary infections. So bedbugs are obligate blood feeders, and so they need that blood meal. And so they will probe you and they will suck the blood from your skin, and this leaves an open wound. Although outside of the lab setting, it's never been proven that bed bugs can directly vector a disease. There's nothing in their body that they are injecting into humans like ticks do. There is the risk for secondary infection. So if you have all these bite marks, you're scratching them, you can increase your risk for things such as staph infections or MRSA. There's also the risk of DIY harm. So people often go to extreme measures trying to remove bed bugs for your home. And I have a short news clip to kind of exemplify that.
And take a look at this. This is another close call in Cincinnati where a teenager started a pretty big apartment fire while trying to kill a bed bug. Investigators say the 13-year-old doused the bed bug with alcohol and struck a match. The flames quickly spread, destroying 6 units and causing about $300,000 in damage. No one was hurt, but 8 people lost their homes.
So you can see bed bugs are pretty severe. They cause a lot of harm to us. So where are you likely to run into them while you're traveling this year? So bed bugs are most often found near human resting areas, as their name suggests, but not only around beds and bed frames. They can also be found on recliners, around chairs, and in really large infestations, those bugs can radiate out from those areas. So you can even find bed bugs in large infestations in the kitchen, in the walls, around the carpet. I also will mention that bed bugs do not discriminate. So it's a myth that only dirty homes or dirty people can get bed bugs. This is not true. Anyone can bring home one gravid female bed bug, one pregnant female bed bug, and end up with an infestation. A lot of people tend to worry about picking up bed bugs in areas of high human traffic, such as airports, hotels, or movie theaters. And while I won't say that this isn't a risk, there is a risk of this. The most common way that people bring bed bugs into their homes is through secondhand furniture that already is infested with bed bugs. So how do we avoid them? As I said, you shouldn't bring in secondhand furniture if you can help it, especially any secondhand furniture that cannot be deep cleaned. So if you bring in like a plastic table and you're able to really scrub it and there's no areas that are hiding places, you should be able to remove all the nymphs and eggs that you might not be able to see. But if you bring in something such as a upholstered couch, there's so many hiding areas, there's so many areas you can't get to clean that could have bed bugs in them. If you're worried about picking up bed bugs in the hotel, you can check the corners of the mattress under the fitted sheets for bed bugs and fecal spots. So again, those bed bugs are visible to the naked eye, but the best way to see them is through those fecal spots, these dark brown or rusty spots on the mattress. This is their feces. If you're worried about them being on the carpet or on any chairs, I would recommend placing your luggage and clothing only on non-porous surfaces like a counter or a table. And if you think you have contaminated your items with bed bugs during your travels, I recommend putting your clothing and backpacks into the dryer on the highest heat setting for a full cycle, so around 45 to 60 minutes. You can also place items that can't be heated like that into the freezer in a trash bag for 2 to 3 days. You just want to make sure the internal of that item reaches 0 degrees Fahrenheit for all the bed bugs, nymphs, and eggs to die. If you do have a bed bug problem, please reach out to a pest control professional. They have a variety of different options that they can use, such as heat treatments, insecticides, and innovative technologies, such as that Bavaria bassiana fungus, which you can see the bed bug infected by here. In summary, tick-borne diseases are a growing concern. While tick-borne diseases are treatable with antibiotics in many cases, preventing the bites is your best course of action. If you do find a tick on you, please remove it safely using those methods I described and take it with you to the doctor. Bed bugs have reemerged in the US. Infestations are difficult and expensive to control, but there is hope. This is why we have pest control professionals, and they are here to help you. You can place any potentially contaminated clothing or backpacks into the dryer or freezer if you think you have bed bugs on them. And remember that while there is a risk at hotels or airports for catching bed bugs and bringing them home, the most common way is by purchasing secondhand furniture that already is infested with bed bugs. I also would encourage you to please reach out to your local extension agent if you have any additional questions. And thank you for listening to me. Here's my contact information as well as the information for our department here at UK. And I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have now or at the end. Thank you all so much.
Well, I'm never going to look at a poppy seed muffin the same way. Ever.
That was good.
But Hannah, that was awesome. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate that. We did have one question and wanted to know if there was any positive attributes associated with the existence of ticks.
Sure. So a lot of people do wish that we could just eradicate ticks due to all the diseases that they carry, and I get it. It is really stressful. Billy, you were saying that you have alpha-gal. My dad also has alpha-gal, and it is really a struggle. But ticks do serve an ecological function, so they are involved in a lot of food webs. A lot of animals do eat ticks. A lot of bird species eat ticks. Possums will eat ticks. They also are helpful with population management. So where they do carry these diseases, things like white-tailed deer, they are a source of population control. So they are valuable for our ecosystem, but they are pretty aggravating.
Hey, well, thankfully we've got folks like you, Hannah, that are kind of helping the rest of us figure out how to navigate this world with these ticks, because they're not going anywhere, right? So,
Oh no. In fact, we're getting more. We're getting
right.
more and more ticks every year.
So we just got to get better at it. So Hannah, thank you so much for sharing some of your knowledge with us, and good luck with your studies. And love to have you back on someday.
Thank you all. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
I'm sure I'll have her booked.
Yes, I know you will, Renee.
Thanks, Hannah.
All right, take care, Hannah. Have a nice Christmas break. All right, that was awesome. Good job. Yeah, I
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
we were talking right before the show, and I was talking to Dr. Ellen Crocker, and she was like, well, you could kind of call the mistletoe the bed bug of the trees. I said, well, okay.
Not
You're
the
muted,
bed
Ellen.
bugs, yes, but
Who
yeah.
doesn't, think of this holiday season and imagine parasites and, organisms sucking the blood from humans or the sap from trees?
I figured out is why would you want to kiss under that? It's just who came up with this idea? So
People are funny,
Yeah.
Renee. Yeah.
They are funny. And the mistletoe thing has been funny for a long time. Like mistletoe, we're all excited about the holidays. And Renee, I know you've got your mistletoe ready to go. For those who don't know, Renee is an excellent holiday decorator on a number of levels. But the whole history of why we use mistletoe, why do people kiss under the mistletoe, is really interesting. And a lot of different cultures from across the world have different kind of lore related to mistletoe and romance and mistletoe and fertility. And I think it's something, there's many different traditions for that, but I kind of think it has to do with the fact that everything has lost their leaves. It's looking bleak and dreary. And then you've got this plant that's bright green in the canopy of a tree. And it kind of inspires some hope and happiness in the season for us. Now, for that tree, that is a parasite that is living off of that tree and benefiting from it, causing some damage to that tree as well. And so, joining us today, we've got another graduate student who's actually researching mistletoe and is going to tell us a little bit more about, what is this mistletoe doing in our trees? We know what it's doing when we hang it in our house for the holidays, but what is it doing outside in our trees? So I want to welcome Louise Hosberg to join us.
if you want to turn your camera on, there she is. Thank
Hey,
you.
Louise, how's it going?
Going good. Thank you.
Mistletoe expert.
Yeah, Louise, you wear many hats around here, right? That's awesome.
Yeah, so I know Louise was studying mistletoe for her research. So she's going to tell us a little bit about what mistletoe is, what it's doing, but also what she's doing and looking at and how you can help.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for that introduction. Let me get my slides up here so I can tell you all a little bit more about mistletoe and the project that I am working on. So yes, American mistletoe is what I'd like to talk to you all about today. American mistletoe is the species that we have here in Kentucky and surrounding areas. So it is found on eastern black walnut trees, American elm trees, slippery elm, and black locust specifically around here. And you can see in this picture on the right, the red line kind of shows the distribution of where you can find mistletoe. So south of that line here in the US, and it's range is categorized by the cold winter temperatures. So mistletoe doesn't really like the cold. It doesn't do well with freezing temperatures. So you can see in this picture, it's green, bright leaves, which we all know, once the leaves fall, we can see that pretty easily. So their leaves, like I said, are bright green, and mistletoe is considered to be a hemiparasite. So that means that it can photosynthesize on its own, but it does need water and nutrients from its host. So the genus Phorandendron and the species is Luocarpum. So the genus actually Phorandendron means tree thief, which is actually what it is doing. So thieving from our trees. So what is mistletoe exactly? Like I said, it is a parasite. It's a perennial flowering plant, and it must acquire its water and nutrients from a host. So I'll be looking at eastern black walnut specifically, and this is kind of an image that describes how the mistletoe adheres to the trees. To kind of give you some background, this is from Dr. Kim Cotter from the University of Georgia. He has an American Mistletoe Manual that has a ton of information if you're craving more. But I thought that this really described the action of mistletoe landing on a tree and what happens. So it is pollinated by birds and insects, and it is primarily distributed by birds. So they'll go up to a fruiting plant that has the pseudo berries, and they'll eat the berries, or the berries will get stuck to their beaks. They'll fly to another tree, land, and they'll either deposit the seed or they will wipe their beak on the branch. So you can see in this picture, in the square one, there's the seed and the vicin. That's that sticky material that surrounds the seed. And once it sticks to a twig, it eventually puts out this little radicle that eventually becomes a holdfast. And then the holdfast turns into a hostorium. And then you can see in the panel 5, that's about year 2, you'll see a mistletoe shoot that has established its sinkers and strands, which is how it connects into the branch and how it gets to the xylem where the sap flow is and the water and the nutrients. And then later in panel 6, you see the plant growth for year 3. So then you'll have a mature, established mistletoe individual. So, and I will point out from this slide, the hostorium, they're not roots because they're not connected to the ground. This is considered the resource exchange interface. So just to make that distinction, that they're specifically on the tree and getting their water and nutrients from their host and not exactly from the ground. So my project proposal objective is to determine the impact of the rate of infection of American mistletoe on the phenology and performance of eastern black walnut trees. So on the left, this is what you might consider a low infection rate. And then here on the right is what you would call a high infection. So yes, all of those clumps are mistletoe. There is no foliage on this walnut tree. So it is pretty heavily infested. And so I'm interested in how the different rates of infection will affect the host tree, given the phenology and performance, which I will give you some more information about. So the phenology is when we're looking at a tree and at what time in the year it is having a bud burst or leaves are flushing or whenever it starts to flower or fruit. And then in the fall, like you can see here in this graphic, how the leaves will start to senesce and fall off. So all of that information can tell us how these different levels of infection of mistletoe is impacting the host tree. And then we can also look at the canopy coverage and whether or not it's 100% or less. And we can also look and see if there's any dieback. So those are some measurements that we'll be taking. And then also, this is an image of transpiration, but when we talk about performance, we're talking about sap flow. That's the measurement that we'll be collecting, and the performance and sap flow data that we'll be measuring is also correlated with transpiration, like you see in this image. And then transpiration is also correlated with photosynthesis. So it's a way for us to tell how well the tree is functioning in relation to the mistletoe infections. So comparing low versus high again. So the need for and significance of this proposal project, we don't really know how many mistletoe is too many and what the potential carrying capacity is before a tree starts to experience a certain response. Like I said, with the phenology, maybe it's leafing out later in the year, or maybe it's not fruiting as much, or maybe there is some dieback that we'll notice from a high infection or from a low infection. So we're going to be taking a look at that. We also would like to know when we should be intervening. If you have a tree that has a low infection, and we know after research that, high infection is bad for a tree and that, it will start to decline at this point, then maybe we should be looking at those trees. If you have a eastern black walnut in your front yard that you love so much and it's full of mistletoe, maybe we can have a conversation about what to do after this research. But anyways, and then warming temps could increase infections. So like I showed you in the distribution map, as temperatures increase, you could potentially see that distribution of mistletoe moving more north. But you could also possibly see the lower infections or trees with no infections start to have a higher infection, or then themselves, if they had no infection, have a low infection. And then, as you know, as I've been telling you about, more mistletoe could stress our trees out. So if you have a tree that is in a situation, an urban situation that has poor soil quality, or maybe it's already dealing with something that is limiting its ability to thrive and grow, then having mistletoe that is diverting its resources for itself, low, high infections, that could also stress our trees out. So the experimental plan will be taking place here in Lexington, Kentucky and surrounding rural areas. The study trees will be selected based on if they have a low infection or a high infection, and whether or not they're in an urban setting or a rural setting. So here is a map from iNaturalist. These little pins here on the bottom left, that is from McConnell Springs, some sightings that I've already went out and found. And then in the middle is the Lexington Cemetery. And then above that is BCTC. And down here by the Chevy Chase mark, that is our UK Arboretum. So all of these pins are mistletoe sightings. The ones that I've just described are ones that I have gone out and pinned, but then we have others out here that other folks have pinned. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But yes, the experimental plan hosts phenological observations, hosts canopy cover, hosts water relations, and soil samples, just to kind of categorize more information about the differences in sites. And the infection rate on phenology, so we talked a little bit about that, but those observations will be made bi-weekly starting March of 2025. The data will be collected, we'll be observing bud burst, like I mentioned, leaf production / flushing, leaf shedding, flowering, fruiting, as well as any herbivory. And this picture here is just a little black walnut kind of coming out. So really looking forward to this spring. I do like winter, I appreciate it, but I am looking forward to spring and getting out in the field and, categorizing all these different infection levels in the phenology. So then after that, we'll be looking at performance, like I mentioned, sap flow. So that data will be collected bi-weekly, beginning of summer 2025. And the sap flow sensors will be installed relative to the mistletoe attachment points. So we're interested in what's going on below the mistletoe, so closest to the trunk, and then above the mistletoe and nearest to the tips, and what's going on with the sap flow above and below the mistletoe attachments. And then we're also interested in neighboring branches and whether or not those branches and the sap flow is compromised, being near an infection. And then also we'll be obviously getting sap flow from control branches so that we can compare with the different infection levels. And this is just a picture of a data logger box with some sap flow cables hooked up and the battery on top. So that is how we'll be collecting that data. And so if you all see any mistletoe sightings, please let me know. There is my email, louise.hosberg@uky.edu. And I talked about iNaturalist. If you're an avid user, please, you see mistletoe out in the field, you can snap a pic. It doesn't have to be great, just snap a pic, tag it with American mistletoe. Even better yet, the genus and species Phorandendron leucocarpum. And if you're not familiar with iNaturalist, it is an application that you can download on your phone, and it's free, and you can be out in the field and snap a picture of this plant or this animal, and you can let folks know what you see out and when you're out and about. So you can also assist if you would like with this project and snap pictures, send me emails. whatever works for you. So anyways, thank you all so much for your time and listening. And thank you for having me on the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really like that. And, I love the idea that people could actually get involved and help in your project, because I mean, you can't be everywhere, right? So,
No.
so it's awesome that that can happen.
Yeah. Hopefully a lot
Yeah.
of people want to follow up with you. Go ahead. Sorry, Dr. Cocker.
No, no, I was just going to say we know that mistletoe is not great for trees. Like we know it's a parasitic plant, but I'm excited about Louise's work because we're going to get to figure out exactly how bad is it for trees and when is it doing that. So filling in a lot of gaps there.
That's awesome. All
Luis, we
right.
did have a question about the geographic distribution of it. One of our
Yeah.
viewers had commented that, they see it a lot here in central Kentucky, Woodford County specifically, but maybe don't see it as much in western Kentucky or some other parts of the state. Do you have much insight on that as far as its geographic spread within the state?
Yeah, as far as I know, the reason why you might not see it in certain places, like Western Kentucky, maybe you're not having days, long enough periods of time of freezing. So if you have multiple weeks where you have freezing below freezing temps, then the mistletoe might not be able to last as long there, like they are able to here in Central Kentucky and Louisville, Kentucky, and places where it's a bit warmer for longer.
Okay.
Another
Excellent.
reason could be that mistletoe's favorite tree in our area is black walnut. So if you do not have a lot of black walnut in your area, you also probably are not going to have a lot of mistletoe.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm not sure if our viewer was, thinking about the walnut he's seen out there or not, but yeah, that's a good point. Excellent.
Good.
No, it's very interesting work. Yes.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Louise. Thank you, Ellen. We greatly appreciate you
Yeah.
both being on.
Hey, we'll have to have you back. You got to keep us
Yeah,
updated. Okay, Louise?
definitely. At least
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
by
you.
next Christmas,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. We're all curious now. You've piqued
Yeah,
our
exactly.
interest. Yes. So thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Very cool.
So next week we are having a show on Christmas trees. But I was talking to Dr. Matt Springer, and he said, well, people need to know how to recycle those trees, and he could come on today. And so here he is to tell us, what do you do with those live Christmas trees after you're done with them this holiday season?
Yeah, we're gonna get a jump on things, right? We're gonna even talk about how to get rid of them before we even talk about getting them. Yeah, so that makes
Exactly.
complete sense. But that's how
very
schedules work,
proactive.
right?
Yes.
Well, I'm hoping you don't have your Christmas tree from last year still. Let's put it that way. That's a little bit of a fire hazard.
Yeah. I guess unless it's plastic, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
I did. Yeah, I mean, mine's going on 6 years now, so I guess that's true. Anyway, yeah, there's I'm gonna share my screen here real quick, just to kind of get this going. But there is some definite reasons or options of things you can do that are very beneficial to wildlife, which is why I'm involved with any live trees that you may use for your family to celebrate the holidays. Some of these uses are pretty simple, but others, can be done at your home, or even, you can get a little bit more involved and get active as a community to benefit wildlife and fisheries. So the question always is, and we're here now, is, the holidays are over. What do you do with your Christmas tree? And there are a lot of programs that, in towns where you can just, put them on the curb and they take them and maybe they compost them in certain places. Maybe they just put them in a landfill and others. But there are other uses outside of that. And hopefully you didn't have a visitor like this in your tree. I'm a big fan of Christmas Vacation as a movie. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. And this scene as a kid probably helped inspire me to go into wildlife. But there are options, and it depends, a little bit about what your motivations are, where you live, and how much time and effort you want to put into this, as well as space maybe to hold on to a tree in your yard or on your property and so on. And I just wanted to make sure folks are aware of what those options are. So let's start off with the if you don't have a lot of time or space component. The Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources, in association with their wildlife and fisheries divisions, annually have drop-off locations across the state that highlight an ability for you to donate the tree to them, where you basically make sure that those trees are free of decorations, free of lights. So it's basically back down to that tree that you purchased. You can then take that and take it to a location which is located. They've got Fish and Wildlife has a website that is updated. It has not been updated yet. So I went to it this morning, and it's got the last year's component to it still, and last year's location. So it should be updated here relatively soon. They usually have it up and going before the actual holiday itself. But it has all kinds of locations around the state. It's usually just in a parking lot where you pull up and you just pile up your Christmas tree. And they take those trees, right, at a point in January. So they'll have an end date on the website. It lets you know when you have to get your tree there. They have an end date, and if you get the tree to them, what they end up doing is they take those trees and they build a lot of fish habitats, or they can also take those trees and build wildlife brush piles to be deployed either in our local lakes and ponds, or at local wildlife management areas, with the ultimate goal being that they're providing basically woody structure and cover for either fish, and in the fishery sense, and I'm getting out of my realm here because I'm not a fisheries person and not a fishery biologist. In a fishery sense, though, many species of fish and sizes of fish will utilize these resources as cover in those lakes and rivers. So all of those locations of where they drop those are also then made available to the public for folks for fishing, so that they know where that structure is in the lake, and therefore can take advantage of that as a resource to hopefully increase their fishing productivity. From the wildlife side, it does kind of the same thing. It attracts a suite of species, mostly smaller, and we're going to get into that in a second. But it provides some pretty, good thermal cover to get through the winter months, that breaks down and is, naturally recycled by all of the things that do that in our ecosystem. So if you want and have the space in your yard or on your property, you can make it more bird friendly by doing what we just spoke about in terms of utilizing your Christmas tree. But since we're still on the front end and you may be wanting to decorate Christmas trees for the holiday, you can make a bird friendly backyard by creating ornaments that are food sources for birds, right? So you can use your cookie cutters and develop bird seed and bird food into little ornaments using string or fruit and put them on your tree. I believe we've had some folks and shows previously that walks through it. So please utilize those resources. And I'm sure Renee is thinking about how to connect those resources to you on the show already, as I mention it. But those trees, as I mentioned, you take that Christmas tree and adds that thermal and protective cover. And the best way to do that on the back end, right? So this is your Christmas tree you're getting rid of now at this point, is to lay that Christmas tree down in your yard near your feeders or food sources, creating that brush pile effect that the songbirds or the rodents, the mice, can quickly get to whatever food sources may exist and lower their chance of being predated on. So it's providing that escape cover, especially for birds, to fly back and forth, grab food, get to cover, so that the hawks and other predators that could take advantage of that food source being an attractor to them have basically something in the way of making their hunting less efficient. Other mammals that use this, so we have birds benefit, but mammals that use this are things like rabbits, possums. If you make a big enough brush pile, you can have things like skunks, groundhogs, even coyotes, foxes, bobcats will use them if it's a large pile. Your one Christmas tree is enough to really help birds and small mammals like mice and rabbits. But if you want to benefit other larger wildlife like the bobcats and so on, you're going to need to make a multi-tree pile to correspond with the larger animal that it is. So that's kind of the two big ones. If you have a larger property, the further away from human dwellings, the better. And you can add this over the years and build up, but usually the Christmas trees do not last that long in the environment. They break down pretty quick. So that is, one of the best ways you can utilize Christmas trees to help wildlife and fisheries. Either, put them in your yard yourself, on your property yourself, and build that wildlife brush pile, or take them to those drop off locations and let fish and wildlife do the work for you. Alternatively, if you're not a big fan of wildlife and want to get rid of your Christmas tree, you can find the local goat producers, and goats will eat them pretty regularly. So just want to say there's another option if you're not a fan of wildlife. You can be a fan of goats. I mean, who doesn't love a goat? So there's some other resources that are out there that U.S. Fish and Wildlife has created on how to decorate Christmas trees. And I just want to make you aware of them. So if you Google backyard Christmas tree for wildlife, you may find a image like this with great information on how to better decorate both for the holidays and help wildlife at the same time. With that, I want to point you to that Christmas tree website that Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife has that will be updated shortly, that has all the information on locations of the Christmas tree drop-offs as a list with addresses, as well as an interactive map to help you find them. Along with the National Christmas Tree Foundation has an entire website dedicated to how to recycle trees and the different ways that you can do that that are all environmentally friendly. Hope that kind of gives you some ideas as you are getting ready to approach the holidays. Right, we're often thinking of how beautiful these trees are and how they can really give us a location for our families to gather around and celebrate together. But please think about how you can then use those as an additional resource for wildlife, for the environment moving forward. With that, I'm happy to take any questions that may people have.
Someone just asked if you could show that previous slide on how to decorate for wildlife.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I have to share again. Hold on.
Oh, that's okay. You'll get it. But I really love the fact that you can do something with your tree after it, is that it's not just gone, so I love the fact that you can do something with it. But yeah, that's a lot of different information, different things you can do for wildlife. Does any of this help other than, it's just not just birds, right? It's other wildlife would eat some of this too?
Oh yeah, many things that you may not want in your yard. So
Well,
as I look at this diagram, I see raccoon food all over that. As well as if you're in Southeast Kentucky and it's a warm part of the day, that a couple days in a row where it's still warm, you may have some bears that visit your party.
oh,
So that there are many mammals that would definitely partake in many of these offerings, not just the avian variety. So be cautious about where you
maybe decorate it
things.
further away
As,
from your house.
get ready for visitors, the wanted and unwanted, just like the holidays at many of the families, as I am aware.
There you go.
All right, so I hope that you all were able to grab. I'm gonna kind of close this down again. That way I can see any other text that comes through.
Awesome.
If you need it, please email me. I'm happy to share. If you do need the resource a little bit longer.
Well, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate that. And I know we were jumping the gun on just a little bit, but yet, that's something that a lot of people probably don't think of. They might be like, well, I'm going to go out and get a Christmas tree. They know they're going to do that. But then after the fact, it's like, well, what do I do with it now? So it might be good to actually have them thinking about it in advance of buying their tree. So
Always better to have a plan.
definitely. All right, well, I don't see any more questions, so I appreciate you joining us today.
Excellent. Everyone have a wonderful holiday.
All right. Well, we had a lot of good guests on today, a lot of good information. Really appreciated all of our guests being on. I guess we have one more show this year that we will be doing, and that'll be next week. And then after that, we'll be off for a little bit of a holiday break. But we greatly appreciate you joining us each week. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can email me at forestry.extension@uky.edu, and we will get those answered for you. Or if you see anything out in your woods that you might be like, hey, there's a show topic somewhere in there. Let me know, because I'm always doing show topics and I always need lots of information. So you can email me that as well, or go to fromthewoodstoday.com, and there's a survey link there, and you can check out all of our past shows on that link as well. So we greatly appreciate you joining us, and we will see you next week. Take care. Bye.
From the woods today. From the woods today.